Hello everyone for the presentation of our Lord, February 1-2, and using the Gospel Luke 2:22-40. Well, last week we had Matthew's Gospel, who wrote his Gospel around 80 at the latest, 50 years after Jesus died. And he dealt with the public presentation and the public ministry of Jesus. Jesus was in the garden 40 days, 40 nights, tempted. He leaves and goes back to his hometown, Nazareth. He finds out that John the Baptist is arrested, and he goes to the Sea of Galilee, Capernaum, and he begins his public ministry when he's 30 years old. Today, in the feast day of the presentation, we have not Matthew's Gospel, but Luke's Gospel. And he wrote his Gospel even later, probably 10 years later, maybe up to 90 A.D., 60 years after Jesus. And he too talks about the public ministry of Jesus, that this Jesus was to be the light of the world. And he doesn't talk about Jesus going to the desert, but he talks about Mary and Joseph going to the temple and presenting their child to the Lord when he's only 40 days old. And in the story, it deals with Simeon and Anna in the temple and Mary and Joseph. Mary is purified because she spilled this blood in the birth of her child, and that was the rule or custom at the time. And then, because it's her firstborn, she is called privately to dedicate him to the Lord. And she does. And they are called to private dedication, a pair of turtle doves, or 2 sparrows if you're poor, but not publicly. Luke makes this publicly at 40 days. And I find that interesting because of what is said there and why we use candles, at Mass, or lights on our Christmas trees at Christmas time. It's because Christ is the light of the world. And that's exactly what Simeon says. And Luke quotes him what he says. He says 2 things, and one is a light for revelation of the Gentiles and a glory for your people Israel. So Christ was to be to a light to the Gentiles and glory for the Jews. Secondly, he says, behold, this child is destined for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be contradicted. So all these words of Simeon are written down carefully in Luke's Gospel. Well, I asked myself, well, what about Anna? What did Luke say about Anna? And we said, Anna said apparently many things. And the quote in Luke is, and she spoke about the child to all who are awaiting the redemption of Israel. Well, what did she say? Luke doesn't write a thing. Isn't that par for the course? They quote the man and not the woman. I guess it was the sign of the times. But the point of all this is Jesus, the light of the world, and the glory for Israel. Jesus is the hope or the light of the world. Since early Christianity, they thought and said that Jesus was like the sun, the light of the world, rising out of the darkness, dawn from the earth, the light of the world. Jesus was suffered and was killed and rose again and rises like the sun in the early morning in splendor and glory, the light of the world. Jesus is the light in the darkness, the light of the world. And Jesus is there in time of persecution and trial and difficulties, like the early Christians being persecuted had to go to the catacombs, and they took their oil lamps in those dark, danky places for fear of being killed, and they lit their oil lamps, and they compared to Jesus as the light of the world in that catacomb. The church came out and used oil lamps to remember that. Jesus, the light of the world in a world of darkness. And so we took oil lamps, and later we took candles, and we would look at that candle and say, the light of the world. In fact, we made a special candle at Easter time. In the night, in the dark, we light that Easter candle because it's Christ, the light of the world. And we even do this on our Christmas trees. Why do we have Christmas trees? Well, they're evergreen. They're ever filled with life, Jesus. And He is the light of the world. So I'll put lights on my Christmas tree. What about you? So whether you go to Luke, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, the message is Jesus is the light of the world. Whether you go to our present day and the best of theology, it is Jesus is the light of the world. Do we really believe this? Is He my light? Is He your light? Is He in the message, His message, being listened to as the light of the world? I hope so. I think it's our only real hope to listen to the message of peace and love and forgiveness would certainly light up the world. So, I don't know about you, but these old things, I got this in the catacombs, Callistus, a long time ago, this oil lamp, or the candles that we carried in today for Mass, or the Paschal candle that we used and continue to use at the death and burial. Bottom line, Jesus is the light of the world. I hope He's your light and my light. If He is, you will have a good day. Here we go again. Here we go again.